Welcome to the Auric Investigators Podcast with Vicki McHale, a mutant 4/6 emotional generator with a line 1 motivation, and Lauren Wenzel, a collective 5/1 mental projector. Join us as we deep dive into off the beaten path subjects. But be careful because we might just make you think, or even better, burst a few outdated bubbles around what you've been led to believe is truth. Agree or disagree, it's okay, because we have nothing to prove. So let's get started. Hey, welcome to Auric Sleuths. I'm Vicki McHale, and this is my gorgeous co-host, Lauren Wenzel. And today we're going to talk about the difference between initiation, responding, and between a generator or for generators and projectors, and where sharing comes into the mix with that, because a lot of times people seem to get really confused about which is which. So that's what we're here to talk about today, and we hope you enjoy this episode. And since Lauren is our resident projector, I'm going to invite her to start the conversation.
Thank you, Vicki. So this is something that I hear a lot with my clients, with people who are experimenting with their design, with their human design. And if they're not a manifester, there's this, I feel like, confusion in the community of, okay, well, I'm not supposed to initiate, so I'm just waiting all the time. And then but like, how do I get people to know what I know or what I'm good at? And that's where sharing comes in. And, um, you know, as a projector, especially, and being gifted in your circuitry, your channels, what you're naturally talented at, there's a difference between sharing versus initiating and trying to get into somebody's aura field and lasering in on them. So if you're on social media, if you're talking to a friend, whoever that is in your kind of field, and you're just sharing, like, hey, I came across this and I thought it was really interesting, or, I found that this is very helpful. Or if you're like an individual and you have individual channels and you're like showing like your artistry, if that's part of your gifts and you're just sharing from that place, that's a really good way to get people to recognize you. Because that way you're not in that sort of like maybe victim mentality of, oh, well, I'm just waiting. And I know that I've been there where I felt like, oh, I'm sharing, but nothing's really like biting right now. And so maybe I just need to wait. So it really is an experiment and seeing how you feel, especially like as a projector, tuning into that frequency and your joy. So does this bring you joy as you're sharing? Like, are you sharing inspiration if you have like a defined head in ajna? Are you sharing from your heart? If you have a defined ego, like really tapping into your definition as well.
Yeah. Well, what about when you're scrolling on Facebook and people write posts about, oh, what's your opinion on this? Or what do you all think about that? Is that an invitation for a projector?
That's a really good question. I think it's so personal too. Sometimes I will feel like, oh, I feel like responding to this, or I just will share my insight since it is out there and an invitation. But I've noticed that the recognition is so important for projectors. So somebody might like say, oh, thanks. And then that might cause like a little bit of bitterness if that recognition really just isn't there, or that comment or that insight wasn't like received. So it's just really like you get to experiment with that. But if it's all about like how you feel, like, if this feels good to, you know, put your insight on, or, like experimenting with your intuition, if that's like your inner authority. And also like just playing around. I think sometimes we can get so caught up in like doing the experiment right, and like doing our inner authority right. And there is no right way. Ross said this is an experiment, and typically it takes 7 years to decondition. So might as well fuck up around like along the way, do a little bit of line 3 stuff, and just have fun too, and see what you learn from it.
Yeah, and I do that sometimes too, because sometimes I see a post and they're not really asking for an opinion or what have you, but in my mind is if you put something on Facebook, you are opening yourself up to people responding to that.
Right.
Now, I try to never go in and, just be rude or cruel or what have
Right.
you, but
Yeah.
sometimes like my sacral lights up and I'm emotional. So if I wait a day or two to respond, I'm not going to remember what have you. But sometimes I'll let it go by and then like a couple hours later I'm still thinking about it. So I'll go in and I will say what I have to say. And sometimes it's crickets, and then sometimes I get a ton of feedback, or sometimes it's cricket for like 2 or 3 days and then somebody sees it and
Hmm.
goes in. Now, one of the things I've had to learn is, I'm the right angle cross of tension. So sometimes I come in and I put stuff out with a good heart and a good intention, but it triggers people. And
Hmm.
so learning not to kind of take that personally. It's like I will actually see battle lines being drawn. Like she's right, she's wrong, and like it creates this whole thing. And I'm going, oh, you know. Oh, but it is what it is. And that's the thing is like in the beginning, I would like, especially I'm also a line 6. So it's, should I say this? Should I not say this? Like really kind of going back. And
Hmm.
I've gotten to the point where sometimes I just really don't care what the reaction is, as it feels good to me in that moment, and I'm just going to say what I want to say and let the fallout or not be whatever. And
Hmm.
um but yeah, it's interesting the reaction. So I think at least for me that response a lot of times is that without, and my 39 is subconscious, and so I don't even realize I'm doing it. Now that I'm aware of it, I really tend to like tiptoe around it more because I've had that backlash. I cannot tell you how many times in my life, like I said something and I thought I had a great night and everything went well. And like a week later, I find out like I triggered somebody and I'm like, I don't even know what I said. You
Hmm.
know, and there was a time I took that personally, like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person, like it, but it's just the way I'm designed. That person
Hmm.
needed to hear that at that point in time. So learning to deal with that also from response.
Yeah, and especially in the coaching space, what a lot of successful people, especially like more of like the masculine patriarchy, it's like if you want something, go out and do it, just do it, like that Nike slogan. That's such a manifester thing to say. And that's only like 8 or 9% of the population. And even manifestors are deconditioned out of, informing and initiating, but they still have that waiting time because they're not an energy type. They still need that rest. And so this hyper masculine action of always being in initiation, in doing this, and if you're not, like, you're self-sabotaging and all this, it's like it's just good to know your design and just kind of witness what other people are saying, right? It's like, okay, well, this person, like, they're spewing out their beliefs and what works for them. That might not be true for me. And especially as a projector, you cannot initiate. It feels so incredibly uncomfortable. Like, I can't tell you how many times, even before I knew I was a projector, and I had people tell me, "Oh, like you should reach out to this person, offer them this." It made me so uncomfortable and like cringy. It's like, you know, I can share what I do, or like if somebody wants my help, and I can do the best I can, even if I'm not offering it, and if I just get good at it. That's usually how like I started my entrepreneurial journey. And if people want to refer out, or that's great. But if you're intentionally initiating as a projector and somebody doesn't know you and you're trying to get in their field, it can be very, very uncomfortable. And it can lead to a lot of bitterness because then all these stories are going on. Like, oh, there must be something wrong with me. I'm doing something wrong, and this and that one. It's just our aura type, we laser in. Like, it's just penetrative. And so if we're not being recognized, if that's not even being welcomed, it can, and it's so unconscious too. Like the other person probably doesn't even know what's going on, or like in their mind, oh, this person's a projector. They're not waiting to be recognized. Like, who would think that, right? But it really is the energy. The energy really speaks for itself. But what a projector can do, and I know it's so outside the matrix, it's so outside of the programming, it's really just sharing what you're naturally gifted at, coming from that place and that joy when you have the energy, and then, getting that extra generator support when you can, whatever that looks like. Or, finding your own unique rhythm with your design and letting go of the generated conditioning. I'm still deconditioning, I'm still experimenting. The other night I noticed that my mind was trying to get me to do something, and I was so tired. And my vehicle, my body was just like telling me, no, we're not doing this right now. And I noticed in my sacral, in my stomach, that there was a lot of tension. And I had this epiphany of like, oh my gosh, my mind has been pushing my sacral my whole life to keep up with this generator world. Holy crap.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Talk about body mapping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So what do you think is different as a generator to wait to respond and sharing and not initiating?
It's so funny that you talk about this because I also have that 360 and I'm all individual. So I have that hurry up and wait, nothing, nothing, nothing. And sometimes it seems like it takes so long. And then you hear somebody say, well, you should just go out and do it, or you should do that. And I go back and I go, you know what? Yeah, I think I'm just going to go out and do it because, back before I learned about human design, I pushed through and I just did things and it worked out. But then when I look back, I go, oh, I pushed through it. I fought for it, but eventually it wore me down or it broke down. So I really have to, because I have enough energy and power that I can make things happen. But for me, it's one, it's catching myself, and two, really paying attention because I could put something out into the universe, like I wonder if I should do this. And my synchronicity comes usually within a matter of minutes, maybe an hour. Like it's that fast. And I could I've got the 11, so I'm full of ideas. So I can have 50 ideas in 10 minutes, and then I've got 50 synchronicities coming through. So I am really having to learn, like, what am I putting out there? And then when the synchronicity comes, really feeling into it, because I'm also emotional authority. So just really for me, learning to calm down. But I like to play around. I like to have fun. I'm kind of silly. So there are some things where, I'm just going to say whatever it is that I want to say. And because I am kind of gregarious.
Vicky is hilarious. She cracks me. She has the best jokes, and it's just like, it's perfect.
Yeah, they're all inappropriate. That's why we don't do them on the show. But I'm never going to reach the city of anything. So just enjoy yourself. So and that's not my goal. I just want to be in the middle. Now I forgot what I was saying. Yeah, so sometimes like I'm gregarious and stuff, like I could get away, and that's always been a thing within my life. Like I could get away with stuff that other people can't, and I'm becoming more aware of that. But yeah, sometimes in that response, it's just like I'm gonna say it. Like in the beginning, learning I'm a line 6 and all of this, I was like really beating myself up over it. Let me tell you, this is how bad it was. I read a post about if people don't put there's like this whole test in this website now that if you don't put your grocery cart away, you're a sociopath or a psychopath. Like
Wow.
they're equating it to like the DSM. And I was
Okay.
like, oh my God, sometimes I don't put away my grocery cart like I do now that because I don't want to be on the psychopath list. Um, And so, like, I had to heal that shit out because of this line 6 thing with being a role model. It was like, I didn't know, like, it was a thing. I literally, like, if I pull up in a parking lot and there's a grocery cart in the parking lot right next to my car, I'm like, yay, I manifested this. So I thought I was helping people. And so, like, that's how bad it got when I first started deconditioning, is like looking at
Wow.
things.
You
It
know,
was
it's crazy. I think, first of all, like psychology and the DSM, that's a whole other thing. I think it's really beneficial to just use as a reference, not as a limitation. And then somebody who's unconsciously saying, if you do this, that to me is not okay. Um, and then also sometimes I think we just get so attached to what it says in the chart and each line and each gate and this and that. And it's like you really just have to find what's true for you in it. Because there's no, it's the mind will go crazy with this stuff. It really is
oh,
just
it
trying it
does.
out.
It really
Yeah.
can put you over the top in the beginning.
Mhm.
And then I finally got to the point where I kind of laughed about it and I went, I cannot believe I just spent a whole day on that, because if that shopping cart could have got me in the sociopath lane, there's a whole lot of other stuff that
Well, that just means that you're definitely not, because a sociopath would have no,
yeah.
that they
Oh,
would not have
exactly.
it.
And,
Yeah.
and I know this, but when you're into deconditioning and you're going through
Yeah.
all this, and I'm still working through CPTSD and my healing and all of this, but you see
Yeah.
this, it's like, oh my God, like you're you're halfway off the cliff and you go, wait a second, it's a shopping cart. Like
Yeah.
I'm in Tuesday morning. Like, if there's a corral, I'm going to do it. If I have to walk clear across the parking lot and go up a curb and over a ramp to bring it back to the store, I might not do it. In my past,
Mhm.
I would, because I'm not a sociopath, I think. Well,
Yeah.
anyhow,
You're definitely not.
says you. So,
Hey, I'm open heart and emotional. I'm pretty can spot these things now. Now.
yeah, now. Exactly. 45 relationships later. So I want to, for the generator, I want to talk about the generator. I got myself
Mhm.
all excited. Now my glasses are fogging up. Um, the putting something out and then waiting for the synchronicity, because a lot of times people think once that synchronicity comes, that means go, and it doesn't
Mhm.
mean go. And to me, that synchronicity in a way, and I want to say this the right way. When you talk about a manifester puts something out, and then if they're in their right lane and they're in their zone and they're, you know, in
Mhm.
alignment, things start coming to them. And I think when those synchronicity comes, that is kind of our manifestation, showing us our manifestation ability when those synchronicities start coming to say, oh, you just thought about it. Now here it is. Now you decide if this is what you want, because once we actually get that response, if we are in alignment, if it is the right thing, we do start the manifestation process. We have the energy and the desire to bring things to fruition. So
yeah, and I was reading this quote where Ra was talking about that the projector is just different. They have to be just recognize, even as a kid, a parent can go, "Oh, I see you doing this." They're just constantly recognizing and then inviting to something. It could be simple as, "Oh, I noticed you like to do this. Would you like to do this?" So it's a little bit different, but a generator, every outside stimuli can be a response and can be in response to something. So it's like using all the external stimuli and just being in response. And so
yeah.
you're constantly being in a response to something.
Well, I want to talk to you because I know a few people who are projectors and they're not getting recognized. So then they start throwing everything but the kitchen sink in. I do this, I do this, I do this. And then pretty soon, when a jack of all trades, master of nothing, and then they're upset because they're not getting recognized, and you are being recognized for your zone of genius. What are your thoughts on that?
So the projector, we're here to master systems, and it takes about 7 years to master a system. So if they're maybe like 2 to 3 years in the mastery of their system and they're not being recognized, it's because it's the energy. People can feel the energy of a projector. And like, how do you make sense of that, right? Whereas a generator, they might be 1 to 2 years into something and it feels really, really good, and they're sharing and they're getting all the response, right? And then a bitter projector will be like, what the fuck, I'm doing the same thing, if not more. I know more and I'm not getting that. So it's just a different way a projector is. So the more that they lean into their mastery, really surrender to the patience of it, like within that 5 to 7 year range, it's gonna pop and their aura is gonna work for them. It's not being in the same way as a generator is because they have that defined energy and they're responding and their aura is opening and enveloping the other person or the other people. And so with the projector, it's just really being patient with this time and their mastery and what they're sharing, and not trying to prove or keep up with the generator world. And it's really recognizing their own self through the process, and then just asking, their close knit friends and community and group, like, hey, like, I'm trying this out of being a projector, and like it's really like just being very vulnerable and authentic, and it's like, can you remind me of who I am? Like, what do you see in me? What are my gifts? Because what happens is we can validate ourselves, we can recognize ourselves, but our aura, we really are made for the other, and we do get that energy from somebody else's recognition too. So sometimes we can feel pretty tired if that's not coming in continually. So that's just my experience with being a projector and leaning into this really patient time within myself and mastering this system, and just being committed to my path and letting go a lot of the stories and really focused on um all the memories, all the stories, all the things that I'm still holding on to, and then thinking and then noticing what my condition in my mind is making up to, and surrendering that, and really leaning into, okay, my chart says this, my system, and then playing around with that too.
One of the things that I'm starting to recognize about projectors who are in their zone of genius and they are in alignment, you would never think that they were a projector when they are in their zone of genius and they are putting something out. There is
Hmm.
very kind of a like, I know my shit. I
Yeah.
don't care what
Hmm.
you think.
Hmm.
And there's a special quality to their voice. And if they go off track, you can kind of see that wobble a little bit.
Hmm.
Or a projector is in their zone of genius. And I'm still working with this, but this is what I'm seeing is you could feel it like in their voice or
Hmm.
of course I've got hypersensitive hearing and then I also have outer vision, so it's like I could see it and I can
Hmm.
so like you can tell like there's a gal on TikTok, I don't know her name, but she does like human design readings, and boy, when she's doing those human design readings, she is like on fire. Like she's talking a mile a minute or what have you. There's just a certain aura, like your aura,
Hmm.
your voice changes. You can see it without even understanding what you're seeing. And then you go back and you look up somebody's chart and you go, oh my God, they're a projector. Like before that, kind of sluggish and slow and almost shy. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. Yeah. I think for me, I experienced it a little bit differently. Like I can kind of tap in and see,
Yeah,
I
I'm
can
talking
just
about
feel
how
the
I experience it. Yeah.
yeah, I
How's
can
it
just
for
kind
you?
of I can sense the energy. So if somebody's a little bit more calm and cool, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, they might be like a non-energy type. Whereas a generator is just like, like has the energy, okay, let's go, like they're in response. And then especially if they're in alignment, I feel the satisfaction of them. And they're just putting that out there. And I'm just like, ooh, as a projector, I'm like, let me come in.
Yeah.
Let me come into your field. That feels really good. But with aligned projectors, it's I it's how do I want to say this? So I know the not self of the projector. And I mean, most people, we can identify with the not self of our type. And it's this like, especially the non-energy types of like, we need more naps and rest
Yeah.
and stuff. Um, but when a projector is on, it's so a couple of things. It's if they have generator support, they're going to be able to like use that to their advantage a little bit when they're in their zone of genius. And it's like, and then the magnetism is happening because that's the projector aura type, because people are like, oh wow, she knows her shit, or he knows his shit. And so like it's the lasering in and then it's like coming back. And so it's just like like it's the laser, right? Compared to a generator, which is very, very different. It's like very warm and buzzy. And it's like, it's just a different like experience. That's what I've noticed.
Am I warm and fuzzy? Oh, Lordy. Yeah, it's learning to be in response, and everybody says this. Like when I found out I was a generator and not a manifesting generator or not a manifester, I was just absolutely gobsmacked. And I've only got three defined um, centers, but I've got some pretty strong channels. And
Hmm.
so I think I've always had kind of that, one of them is a format, the 360, and there's a lot of energy behind that. So I think I always thought
What's
like
the
yeah,
format mean again? What's the
format
format
channels,
mean? Yeah.
that is the three channels that go from the root to the sacral.
Hmm.
So it's what is it? It's the 360, the 952, and the 4253.
So what type of energy does the format give off?
The format is very powerful, and I had to work with that. So for me, what happens is when that root turns on, and mine turns on from the emotional, the 3955, and so that's very moody or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been times in my life, if something lights me up or if something angers me, it goes through my system and up through that format, and it's like a tsunami. It's just like, whoa. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like trying to stop a freight train with a hand, because it is just boom, and it can be delightful and intense. Like my whole life, people have told me, you're very intense. If something turns me on and I want to do it, I am intense. Like I am not going to stop, but I initiated from that.
Mm-hmm.
And then if somebody triggers me and that anger comes up through it, it's like wham, and I come from an Italian family on top of that. So
Uh-huh.
nobody ever asked for our opinion. We just thought like everybody wanted it, whether they did or not. So I have been having to play with that. I mean, it is very, very intense. But when it's turned off, it's just turned off. But yeah, it's just think of when like you're super excited and then times it times 1,000. It's just whoa.
Wow.
And it undermined me a lot in my life. But it also pushed me to the front of the class also.
Mm-hmm.
But and when I first started recognizing it, because it feels like it's before I knew about human design, your intuition, like
Mm-hmm.
this is what you need to do. And so I had to learn to just sit in it and feel it and kind of observe and watch. And now when I feel it coming in, I could grab it and pull it back and sit in that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's a really great description of like really mastering your emotional authority too.
Yeah. I've mastered that. I don't know about the rest, but yeah, it's, when you have the 3955, like it goes like this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And what I've noticed also with emotional generators compared to, and depending on where their channel is, there's a depth of their emotions that you can feel compared to a generator who is non-emotional. So it's like this, like you just feel like this like depth of like emotion, but it's like beauty, and it's just very like it can be provoking, especially with the 3955, and but feeling like that energy too compared to somebody who's a generator but they're non-emotional, and it's more of that warm buzzy feeling I was mentioning too. So there's different nuances um with different authorities with the generator too.
yeah. And I do believe that I have the 3955 and then I have the 360 and then I have the 59, but I don't have the 6. But that's very powerful. And
Hmm.
let me tell you, if I pull in that 6, it could be very volatile with all of that
Mm,
emotion and that power. And like,
wow.
yeah, when people are angry at me, they could be very, very angry or very, I used to, back when I was dating and like I was married for 35 years. So there was a short period of time I was dating and then started dating again recently. But it's almost like people become obsessed with you because there's all of that emotion and stuff, but
Hmm.
almost just as quickly when they could feel that other emotion, oh, forget it. So like feast or famine almost.
Wow. Wow.
So, so still things I'm working on as I decondition and I look at things. And it's funny because I went out dancing the other night with my friends and my open G, like I I totally saw that 59 turn on, that flirt, that capture attention, even with people like I wasn't interested in or not. And so I'm flirting. And then they're asking me to dance. And I'm like, why are you asking me to dance? And then it's like, well, you know, damn well you were just like flirting with them and doing all of this stuff. And
Uh-huh.
I totally saw that, like that little bit of seductress. And
Mhm.
but it's kind of scary because it's fun, but I'm also a four. So I have to be
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
careful about that because with that 59 and with that emotional authority, I could get myself in a lot of trouble. So,
So like this is such a great topic to talk about because with this wisdom, then you know, and you can enter in better relationships more in alignment. Because if you didn't know this and you were still in your not self and just, be dating the same type of people and repeating the same type of patterns.
yeah,
And
exactly.
that I know for me that would be happening, and then I'd be beating myself up and making up a story and initiating instead of really waiting to be recognized and pursued, and really patient with that because um even though this is a little bit off from sharing, we're still talking about initiating. So with my attachment style, I used to be very, very anxious. So with anxious attachment, you're chasing and you're initiating. And sometimes there's that avoidance of people who are interested in you. So it's kind of like a back and forth, a little bit anxious, a little bit of avoidance too. But I mean, that was totally how in my younger years, like especially like my early 20s, that's how I would do relationships. And now, thank God that I know, wow, it's like my trauma, my not self, I know how to enter into relationships correctly and how to experience relationships that are successful, which is like huge. It's so healing. And I'm so grateful that I know this stuff and have been experimenting with it.
Yeah.
And not necessarily like waiting for everybody to recognize me, right? Because it's like I'm a naturally friendly person, and if like I want to talk to somebody, like I totally will, and that can develop in a friendship and relationship. But it's just like with the intimate partnerships, it's like especially for a projector, we really need to make sure that we're being recognized and invited. And if there's two projectors, it's like you dance between those two, and just talking about it, I think, as well.
Yeah. How do you, when you have two projectors and you have to be invited? Like, I guess you have to get, you call your
So
generator friend and then you call, you have your generator friend call, Lauren likes you.
so I've noticed, so I haven't dated too much during my deconditioning process. Like I really wanted to make sure I was taking time to heal and focus on myself. But there have been times where I would look at people's charts that I was interested in. We were kind of talking, and I noticed with one person who was a projector, um, we saw each other somewhere, and so it was kind of like that environment. We just were like, oh hey, what's up? Like, because I had known this person before, and then so that was sort of like we kind of recognized each other there.
Oh, okay.
um and then we kind of just developed this friendship again. And then, but I'm so grateful that I really listened to my inner authority and was experimenting with my design so that I didn't go back into any trauma patterns or any like self-sabotaging things. And it was just another learning and teaching opportunity, and seeing where I was taking in this other person's energy and amplifying it, and then seeing where I was still going into maybe my programming still.
Yeah. I was listening to a story, it was a while ago, but it was a projector and he wanted to join a soccer team. I thought this, he wanted to join a soccer team. And so he went, and all the soccer teams were filled up. And they told him the only way he could be on a soccer team was if he started his own team and he recruited people, then they would put him on. Well, he knew because he was a projector that if he started a team, he wouldn't get anybody on the team. So he just thought, well, I guess I'm not going to be on a soccer team. It's not written. And so he went home and he was kind of bummed. And he said, like 2 or 3 hours later, he opened his emails and there was a thing from a friend he knew who said, "Hey, I went down to join a soccer team and they told me," and this person was a generator. And so the generator was in response to the soccer league starting it. And within a matter of hours of walking away from it, he was on a team led by a generator who then was able to get, a ton of people on the team. And he said, and that for him showed like having faith in the system. It's almost like the universe said, okay, good job. You didn't do that. And so now here we're going to bring, and this was a generator friend, he said, that he hadn't talked to in, a long time. But
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that I love how those things work because it really is, your aura type working for you when your mind is kind of going like, okay, going into that doubt maybe, or like maybe going into bitterness or frustration or this or that. But then the universe goes, okay, I got you. I'm gonna show how it can be easier and put other people and places and situations in the mix so you can still be in your correct alignment.
And I also want to talk about how being in response to the universe has worked with me on my healing journey lately. And I'm starting to see this more and more. Is when I feel a block, I will simply put it out. And then it comes to me by way of a synchronicity. And then in that, I get to respond as to what healing modality I'm going to pull out of my toolbox. And I'm still working on this, but I want to give you an example. Is I have just had this block forever. And so I put it out to the universe one day. I'm like, what is it? I don't know what it is. Well, then I was talking to a friend and he was saying, there's something in your energy about drowning. And I'm like, drowning? I don't have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, well, that's what I'm picking up. And I'm like, okay. And then I went, oh my God, when I was like 7 years old, I almost drowned. But it wasn't that big of a deal to me. Like, I wonder what this is all about. So I didn't do anything about it. I thought about it and I'm like, it wasn't that big of a deal. Well, the next day I go to a pool party and I'm talking to some friends, a manifestor friend, so her energy might have helped. I don't know. But all of a sudden, this strange lady comes up. Not a strange lady, but a lady none of us knew. And she just starts talking about how she's getting ready to go to therapy because she has to learn how to breathe because she almost drowned when she was 7 years old. And she tells this whole story and even talks about how she's a scuba diver and all of this. And I'm sitting there trying not to have this gobsmacked look on my face because she's basically telling my story, only a little bit different, even down to the scuba diving details, because I was a scuba diver. So I went, okay, this is the universe bringing me what it is. So I went home that night and started digging and deep diving. Then I got some information and then I called a friend that I do healing with and he went in and basically it came down and he called it. I didn't even realize I was walking out of the lake and my foundation fell out. The floor of the lake just wasn't there. I went under. I could just barely get my tiptoe on something to every like 10 times down, like push myself up to get a breath. And then all of a sudden I was whooshed out of the water because my aunt saved me. And it came down to when my foundation falls out, I'm waiting for somebody to save me. And so I'm not going to go into it a lot, but it made perfect sense. And then I had another block, and then it came to me the other day with just the word disappointment came out. and I had a download onto exactly what it was. So I will say for those on a healing journey, you can also use your strategy and authority to bring you information in response or in being recognized. Well, I don't know about from a projector standpoint, but in response to me, putting it out there, asking, waiting for the synchronicity to happen, and then responding from that. Because before I was doing it in response, I was trying to get to it myself. And then I give up,
Initiating.
put it out there, and then it just was like boom, boom, boom.
So what I've noticed is people will share what's working for them, and then they'll either recognize like something that I'm struggling with. I mean, I think the last time was when this with this new meditation I've been doing since the beginning of the year. That's been, I mean, it was right, it was definitely what I needed. And so it was the recognition, it was the invitation, and then I just knew, and even as like outer authority, sometimes I have my intuition is inconsistent. Like I'll have it, or sometimes if I feel confused about a decision, I need to speak it out and hear how it sounds across multiple people who just will listen and kind of mirror back what I'm saying, but not input their opinions, because then it really confuses me. So that's what I've noticed that works best for mental authority. But yeah, with the healing, that's what I've noticed for myself is like people will recognize, they'll invite me to something, and then I'll see like if it's for me or not.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. And that was just a big aha for me is I've been trying to initiate my own healing journey. What I really needed to do is be in response. And since I've been in response, it's just like boom, 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 things coming.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm kind of having an aha about that right now too with certain things, even like manifesting. Like if I'm like trying to initiate, if it's not the correct time or if it's not coming through my strategy and inner authority, it's not as likely to happen. And with certain things that I've been wanting to manifest, there's an opportunity with something that has been brought into my field through the invitation now. So it's like it's also that divine timing of things, and not what the mind is trying to make you initiate, because it's just conditioning.
Yeah. So interesting. Okay, now I've got another rabbit hole to go down. So I don't have anything else to add to this unless you can think of something else. Is there anything we missed?
I don't think so. Did you want to speak anything more about the sharing?
The
Like
sharing.
how you share versus initiating?
Oh, you know what? If I get an idea and it feels really good, and it feels good a half hour later, if it feels good an hour later, then I'm just going to share because, like, for me, what's the worst that could happen? It's just I'm going to share. And sometimes it's absolute crickets. And then sometimes I have, a great response. And then sometimes it could be weeks later.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I've shared things before and I thought, okay, I thought it was brilliant. But then a week or 10 days later, somebody sees it and then it sparks this whole conversation. So you never know. Like I'll share it and you never know when it's going to come up again.
And I think also not getting attached to the results. I know I'm a person that's really results oriented, even though I have a lot of like detachment and trust and hope in my chart. It's like that part of me, I like to see, the results and where we're going as a projector, and I see patterns. That's kind of it's a conundrum still, but I'm still working through it and experimenting. But with the sharing, I think it's not going into comparison. It's sharing like you said, if it feels good, if you're getting like a synchronicity, if this is something that you want to be known for, that you just have the intention of like sharing because you want to help somebody and coming from your heart. Because I know a lot of people, they'll reach out to me and they don't even engage with my posts and social media stuff. So people are watching, they're listening. Just some people don't engage in social media that way.
Yeah.
And so we get attached to how it's supposed to look like instead of just really sharing because you're in your theme. You could be satisfied, you could be in your joy, you could be at peace, you can be in, that awe and just letting it go.
I always laugh when your post comes out compared to my post, because your posts are always sweet and nice and da da da, and mine are poking, like I'm trying to get a response out of people. Even if I'm not trying to get a response, there's a little bit of that oh type thing, and yours are always very nice and sweet, and mine are like, hey.
And I've tried the other stuff too, where I've tried to be like shocking and dramatic and this and that. And so it's just going through these different stages and flows of, our creative expression as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting when, especially like partnering up with you, because our dichotomy is so different, but the same in many ways. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And there was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember what it is now. So I guess it was a lie.
Guess we'll wait till next time.
Next time. Okay. And speaking of next time, we're going to end it here. And we thank you for being here. And as always, it was an honor to spend Zoom space with you.
Yes, likewise. Thank you. You as well. And we'd love to hear the listeners' feedback on your experience with initiating, waiting and response, waiting for the invitation, depending on your type and strategy and inner authority. So let us know.
Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye, everyone.
Hey, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, we absolutely love your feedback. So check out those links below and reach out with your insight, feedback, and even your ideas. And until next time, remember,
That's all, folks.